Welcome to the Fantasy Hotline. I'm your host, Justin Edwards. Today, joined by Matt Price as we run through some of the best rookie landing spots ahead of the 2024 NFL Draft. We're going to run through the top of the board. Probably not a ton of surprises, but we'll see as we get down on here. We're going to skip past the 101 at least. I think it's pretty well ingrained in everyone's mind that Caleb Williams will be in Chicago in a month or so. So I don't think there's any reason to really pound that down. I'll go ahead and start us off here and go to what might be the 102. I'm going to say Jayden Daniels to the Washington Commanders is probably his best landing spot of those QB-needy teams up top. He's got a little bit of a better infrastructure there than, say, if he does end up going to New England. He's got some better pass catchers. Now, is Jayden Daniels going to Washington better news for the fantasy pieces there? Probably not. I think Drake May would probably float Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, all the way down to Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler a little better. But how do you feel about Jayden Daniels possibly going to the Commanders here in a couple weeks?
If he goes to the Commanders, for me, he's the 101 in Superflex. I have him and Caleb Williams just like pretty much even, but with the rushing upside that Daniels presents. And it's a hairline. Like if Daniels gets past at 2 and goes to New England at 3, then I'm probably I don't want to say I'm out on Daniels, but I might be pushing some like the 2 receivers above him at that point. For me, I'm a little bit lower on May than maybe you are and maybe consensus is. So I prefer Daniels. I mean, I think, he was first in yards per attempt, first in quarterback rating, first in PFS rushing grade, second in PFS passing grade. The one that kind of like really like black eye, I guess, on his on his record, on his profile, is that he's 80th among all qualified quarterbacks in pressure to sack rate at 2022. And that's been a predictive stat the last couple of seasons. I do think it's a little bit different with a guy like Daniels who has the escapability to get away from stuff like that, but that's really the one kind of red flag on his profile for me. So him going to Washington versus New England is just night and day, giving him 2 legit NFL weapons in McLaurin and John Dotson had a down year last year, but I still holding the candle for him, so to speak. So and in New England, what do we got? Demario Douglas and I mean, that's Hunter Henry. I guess it's just a little bit scary there for a guy like Daniels, who we saw excel when he does have elite weapons. So to make that transition to a location, a landing spot where he does have some semblance of passing game weapons would make me feel a lot more confident.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of his fantasy goodness is going to come from his legs, but giving him an actual, as you said, NFL receivers to throw the ball to, it'll be a good boost to his passing stats as well. And I don't think he's, as you said, he's not just a pure rusher. Like he's going to throw the ball.
He's a good passer.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There's like small hiccups. Like I guess he doesn't attack the middle of the field at a high percentage, but I don't think he needed to either. Also, if you can take off and run for 30 yards every single time, like screw the middle of the field. Who cares?
Well, and the deep ball accuracy was just so good. 60%, 64% on target rate on throws 21 or more yards downfield, which was second in FBS last season. Like he's like, people say, okay, he's only the rusher. I get it. But like, I mean, he had one of the best passing seasons in college football history, in my opinion, last year as well.
Yeah. What I had here is the 69% adjusted completion percentage on those deep ball passes. Like, it's hard to poke holes in here, especially from a fantasy perspective. He should be productive in year 1, and as long as he stays healthy, he should be around for quite a lot longer than that as well. Definitely. A couple of those receivers who you were mentioning, if he falls past the Commanders, you got a couple of landing spots here for the top flight wide receivers. Why don't you take one of these and tell us why you like that landing spot?
I think Harrison is, he's the projected first wide receiver off the board, and that would mean he's probably going to Arizona. But I kind of flipped Nabers and Harrison's landing spot here. I put Nabers to the Cardinals and Harrison to the Chargers. I don't think it really makes much of a difference. I just kind of like the connection a little bit with Harrison and Jim Harbaugh. He was actually the quarterback for Marvin Harrison Sr.'s first 2 years in the league way
crazy.
back. I know, right? So like he has some connection with the family there. He faced them as the Michigan head coach multiple times. I think Harrison in both games they faced while he was there were both over 100 yards and a touchdown. So he's very familiar with that player. So, and Chargers obviously have nothing at wide receiver now. And you can say that they don't need it with the way Jim Harbaugh plays his offense with primarily a rushing base attack. Maybe they go with an offensive lineman there to help out that phase of the game, but like they just have like we saw nothing from Quentin Johnson last year. We saw very little from Josh Palmer, and I mean, it's just so ugly. So any receiver that goes there is going to be fantastic. And if for some reason Arizona does take Nabers, who I honestly have both of the receivers 1A, 1B. Like you take whichever one your favorite is. Nabers has some things that he does better. I think he's much better after the catch than Harrison is. A more creative runner, probably a little bit faster. Those kind of things. So you take whichever one you want. Harrison's got the 2 years of excellent production. Nabers only got the 1 year of outstanding. But to see these two in those two spots would be my ideal landing spots for them.
Yeah, I think even I would probably still prefer Harrison in this situation by a good bit, just because of the astronomical type of target share he could receive as a rookie with this.
Yeah,
with Darius Davis and Simi Fehoko as the de facto wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 there behind. If Quentin Johnston's even got a full-time role and Joshua Palmer, at least Nabers would have a little bit of competition if he does end up going to Arizona. Michael Wilson's not a bad player. Greg Dortch is decent enough. Trey McBride proved that he could be a target hog. I think Nabers might be kind of like a power slot, and if he ended up going to Arizona with Wilson and Dortch out wide in 3 wide receiver sets. Not that I think Nabers is going to be pushed off the field in 2 wide receiver sets, but I think he could ball out in 3 wide receiver sets over there as well. But yeah, I think they're both interchangeable. It just depends on where they fall. And both these spots are incredible too. I think all we're trying to do right now at the top of rookie drafts is avoid the Patriots.
Yeah.
That's like,
at some point,
the main goal.
At some point, the Patriots, at some point you have to say, okay, if a top flight weapon goes there, they're going to get a ton of targets. But it's just a scary spot with their history of drafting wide receivers. They're the current, quarterback situation there. It's just a really, really scary spot. Like at some point you want them to turn it around, but this year we hope these weapons go somewhere else.
Right. Like I'm rooting for them, but maybe not yet. Is there anyone? Let's bypass New England. We already beat up on them enough. Is there anyone in the top 12? I can't imagine they would even go that far, but anyone in the top 10 maybe where you are not hoping any of these top flight receivers go? Like, are you worried if someone goes to the Giants, or are you fine with that? Or if for some reason Tennessee decides to take another receiver here?
I would not want to see. It'd be fun for NFL purpose, but for fantasy purpose, maybe not as great. I'd love to see. I would not want to see one of these top targets go to Atlanta. Like,
okay,
I just we have Drake London we've been waiting on. We have Kyle Pitts we've been waiting on forever. Like, let's let these two flourish. If Cousins is back week 1, even that's the whole thing that I think we're not even talking about. Is he going to be back week 1 with this Achilles injury? Right. And if he is, let's let those two guys get some fantasy goodness. And if you put Nabers there, if you put Rome Odunze there, man, it's just going to mess things up. Let's spread out these weapons so they can all have a really outstanding 2024 seasons, So from an NFL perspective, obviously we'd be very good to add a third incredible weapon, or I guess a fourth incredible weapon there if you want to throw Bijan into the mix. But for fantasy purposes, maybe a little too thin.
I think it's kind of similar even in Chicago, where I think one of these guys could easily overtake someone on that team. But, for my teams that maybe still have Keenan shares that I haven't gotten out of yet, like maybe let Keenan have one more year of productivity here. And then
it seems like that situation is almost like if one of them were to go, they're different, I guess, because we like both of these receivers better than, and maybe even Odunze as better than we liked Smith and Jigma last year. But it could be a similar situation where they go there and they're like, okay, they have an okay season, but what do we do with them in year 2 now? I mean, maybe it'd be a little bit easier if Keenan Allen moves on. I thought maybe Tyler Lockett would move on and get out of the way, but that hasn't happened. So we're just in this limbo. Like, what do we do with JSN at this point? And I don't want to be in that situation with either of those other receivers from this season, or either of those 3 receivers from this year.
You could easily see that exact situation play out if you were to go there. So who we talked about? Jayden Daniels. We hit on the top 2 receivers. I'm going to go back to the quarterback position. I think it would be quite beneficial to JJ McCarthy's rookie production if he does end up going to Minnesota. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be at the number 11 pick. It might even be one of these 2 teams we just talked about. There's rumors of Arizona and or the Chargers looking to move back. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But McCarthy's in a pretty good spot here if he ends up going to Minnesota. They do have a very good offensive line. As other offensive line units start to age out, Philadelphia, Dallas, Minnesota looks even better. So he would have good protection. He's got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. We'll see how much TJ Hawkinson he gets. I haven't seen a time frame recently, but I think it was like end of October. So that's like 6 to 8 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah.
So not great there. But I think he could come in. We could really see what he's made out of. With Michigan, you can't fault him for not having to throw the ball too much, but we don't have a lot of games with even 30 attempts, let alone what he might be asked week in and week out on the NFL field. Aaron Jones, good aging pass catcher out of the backfield as well. I think there's room for McCarthy to go to the Vikings and be an intriguing super flex option in year 1. I don't know if I'd put him over like the QB 20 or something. He's athletic, but he doesn't really run with the ball. But in that sense, I think that's probably the best landing spot. I'd rather him go there than Denver or the Raiders or whoever else might be in the QB game right there. What do you think? Where would you have JJ McCarthy ranked, with going in blind? If you only knew McCarthy went to the Vikings, where would you have him ranked as a QB in super flex leagues?
I mean, I guess based on draft capital, he has to be QB4, but I am a little bit lower on McCarthy. I honestly, I a little bit prefer Bo Nix to McCarthy.
Okay.
So I have him at 5 and Nix at 4. But you're right. I mean, in Minnesota is a great spot. Going to a spot anytime you can go to a place with a receiver like Justin Jefferson and those secondary targets as well, like you're gonna have a chance to succeed, right? It's just some things with his games. I know we didn't see a lot of it. So hopefully he is a better passer than we saw in limited stretches. I know that third down efficiency, but also at the same time, he was 66th in FBS on third down passing attempts. That's bottom half of all quarterbacks. You saw him do designed runs on 3rd and long. Like, just like, do they trust his arm in key throwing situations? Like, it just makes me question that. You see in games especially against top talent, Alabama and Ohio State games in particular, where he really struggles to read the deep areas of the field, especially on posts. There's a play against, I mean, it worked out. They won the national title game, right? But I remember there was a play there where, like, their receiver, I forget who it was, it might have been Roman Wilson. He had the corner sold on a vertical route, and he breaks it off on the inside post. There was like 10 yards of separation between him and the safety, and McCarthy doesn't see it and just takes a sack. Like, it's just like some of the things that you see, the inconsistencies in his accuracy and sometimes his inability to read defenses down the field. Like, those are 2 things that could be his downfall. But as far as landing spot goes, as far as Superflex format goes, the positional premium in that format, if he goes in the top 10 to a place like Minnesota, I think you have to consider him in that, like, I don't know, 9 to 12 range. I probably want Xavier Worthy over him and Brian Thomas over him. And then after that, he's definitely in the mix for that next pick, I think.
Yeah, a decent floor, probably low ceiling, just based entirely on landing spot. We'll see. It's kind of with Jayden Daniels. If there's something you need to develop at the next level, it's probably too late on those things.
Yeah. Like, a lot of times, like, we say that they just need to develop in the NFL, but like a lot of times that doesn't happen. Like, you would hope it happens with a 1st round pick and especially a top 10 pick, but it doesn't always happen. Like, if they threw Jordan Love in there in year 1, it would have been a disaster. Are they going to have the patience to have McCarthy sit for a year behind who is it? Sam Darnold there now as the projected
Yeah.
starter. If it's not McCarthy or another rookie. So I just don't think they're gonna. I don't foresee of them having the patience. And then at the upside, like is J.D. McCarthy's ultimate upside Kirk Cousins? Like
Right.
what? I mean, with a little bit of like athleticism, like it's just a weird. I don't know. It's a weird situation for them, and I just don't think that if he gets drafted that highly, he's going to get a chance to really develop.
Let's say hypothetically Minnesota doesn't move up. They don't take JJ. They don't take a quarterback until the second or third round or something. What do you think about Sam Darnold? Like, are you trusting him to get 12 starts, or like he's got to be worth something if they don't take a quarterback here, right?
Well, that beat writer or whoever it was said that Sam Darnold was the best arm talent they had in San Francisco since Montana or whatever last offseason, right? So, and then he never really saw the field for any kind of significant work. So we really don't know what we have with him. If a lot of the NFL is about fit. I mean, if Sam Darnold hadn't gone to the Jets, and had landed in a place where he could develop, could we be talking about him as a top 10 quarterback in the league? I think we probably could. So, can they resurrect that talent? Can they get all of those early, like nightmares that he had from the early part of his career out of him and resurrect the talent that is clearly there, at least enough to be a number 1 overall pick? Can he have some kind of Baker Mayfield like renaissance? I mean, he's got the weapons to do it, right? So, yeah. I mean, if you could do worse if he somehow if somehow they don't end up taking a quarterback here, I think you could do worse than sending like your late second round pick for him in a super flex league to be your quarterback 3, quarterback 2 in a pinch.
Yeah. I mean, hey, Ryan Tannehill broke out in like year 8. Why not Sam Darnold? Why not the ghost of Sam Darnold?
I still want to believe, like it was so much hype on that guy in Devy circles, like before he was like the prospect in Devy circles back
Darnold.
But yeah. So, like you hope. It's probably not going to happen, but it's not completely dead. It's not completely dead, right? You're saying there's a chance.
You're saying there's a chance. All right, let's for our last top of the board guy. Let's go to New York. I'm going to say that maybe this isn't the greatest landing spot, but I think it's a pretty solid landing spot if Brock Bowers ends up going to the Jets to play with Aaron Jones and for the first half of the season before he runs for the vice presidency. I think Bowers going somewhere else where he could legitimately be the first option is probably the best case here, but there's not a lot of those options. I mean, I've seen him go to like Indy. That's not incredible with, how often Anthony Richardson's going to take off the ball. If Rodgers is healthy, he's probably going to be dropping back 40, 45 times a game. Bowers will have to compete with Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson. That's about it. They let CJ Uzama go. The only tight ends they have right now are Tyler Conklin and Jeremy Ruckert. Those guys aren't going to be doing anything to get in the way. Robert Tonyan had an 18% target share in 2022, which I didn't realize. So I feel like Bowers is an upgrade on Robert Tonyan. So what do you think about Bowers going to the Jets and maybe flirting with an 18% target share in his rookie season?
Yeah, I think it's a fine landing spot. I do have a spicier one that I'll save for a minute.
Yeah, please.
But I mean, you can't argue with it. He's presumably got a I don't know. Is Rodgers is certainly still a top half of the league quarterback, maybe still a top 10, top 12 quarterback from an NFL perspective, not necessarily a fantasy perspective. But my personal rule when drafting tight ends highly is that they have to be a top 2 target on their team. Okay. It's shown that if you are a third or worse option in the passing game, your likelihood to be a top 6 tight end in fantasy, which to me is kind of, it's an arbitrary cutoff, but like the back half of the tight end one, you scored 1 catch, 1 touchdown, you could be a back half tight end one on a week, right? So sure. I really want to, if I'm going to spend up, I want a place where he's going to have a high target share, and the Jets certainly qualify for that. I mean, we can talk about him as a prospect, but I feel like everybody knows that he's a great prospect at this point. My spot would be like, okay, so of these top teams that need a wide receiver, what if the Chargers took Brock Bowers at 5? He's the leading pass catcher, and we know how good he is as a blocker. He would also help facilitate that run game that Jim Harbaugh wants, whether it's with Gus Edwards or Blake Corum if he brings in, or somebody else later in the draft. Like, that to me is pretty exciting for Brock Bowers. To me, that is like the spot. If the Chargers don't go wide receiver, I know they probably need wide receiver worse, to be honest with you. But if Bowers went there, wow, that could be incredible for both fantasy and what Jim Harbaugh wants to do with his offense.
Yeah, I don't think Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst are going to be forcing Bowers off the field anytime soon. Yeah, I mean, if he were to go to the Chargers, how ridiculous would it be for him to lead the team in target share? That wouldn't be wild at all.
He just did it 3 years in a row at Georgia. He led Georgia all 3 years in targets, receptions, and receiving yards, I believe. 2-time Mackey Award winner, all that kind of stuff. He's a fantastic prospect. He's not athletically a freak like Kyle Pitts was, but from an all-around standpoint, like, I think he could be just as good for fantasy.
I think Justin Herbert would be so excited to get some talent back on the field. He might just hit like 130 targets.
we need the next great tight end in San Diego. We need the Antonio Gates, Antonio Gates 2.0 back there. So
exactly.
Make it happen. Sorry, not San Diego anymore. LA.
Well, I wouldn't have even noticed. I was just going with San Diego. Right. Yeah. Look, everyone loves Donald Parham, but let's get let's get a full-time tight end in Los Angeles, San Diego. Absolutely. Is there anyone here at the top of the board that, I mean, there's a lot of guys we haven't touched on, but is there a specific matchup that we haven't touched on here? Let's say the top 15 picks or so where you're like, actually, this landing spot might be even better than the rest of them.
Top 15 in the NFL draft, you mean?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Like top 15, top 20 in the NFL draft.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
After we get that run of offensive players, there's a lot of D linemen and edge rushers and cornerbacks.
Maybe like I don't think New Orleans is going to spend up on an offensive piece necessarily, but after Olave, it gets kind of iffy there. So I mean, they could probably potentially have a receiving weapon. Maybe that's a spot if for some reason Odunze falls past Chicago at 9. Maybe they're a consideration there. I don't know. Like, you could play. Yeah. You could certainly see him playing kind of a souped up Michael Thomas kind of role. Like, you can do a lot more obviously than the slants and things that Thomas was so successful on. But a nice compliment, I would say, to the speed of Olave.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There we go. That's the top of the draft there.